South Africa's parliament this week passed a bill which would expunge criminal records for those convicted of breaching COVID-19 lockdown laws. The country had some of the world's toughest restrictions, which saw more than 340,000 people convicted for not wearing masks, consuming alcohol, and breaking curfew, among other violations. Those who admitted guilt and paid fines will now have their records cleared. South Africans have broadly welcomed this bill. There had been numerous complaints about people missing out on employment opportunities because of their criminal records. The bill has to be approved by the National Council of Provinces and then signed into law by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Arise analyst Mxolisi Masango now links up with us to discuss the essentials of South Africa's bill to expunge criminal records for those convicted of breaching COVID-19 lockdown laws. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.
Oh, it's only a pleasure.
Now, tell us a bit more about this bill that has just been passed by Parliament.
Right, as you've rightfully mentioned in your intro, so Parliament just passed this bill to have these records, criminal records of those people who were convicted for flouting COVID-19 rules expunged. This will see about 340,000 people who were actually found guilty at the time of flouting COVID-19 rules and regulations, maybe let off the hook, if we can put it like that. Right now, I think the police minister, Bheki also went to length to actually explain that how this process will actually work. And also those who admitted guilt and paid fines will now have all of their records cleared, because if I can take you through the process here in the country, how it usually works, that when you are found guilty in a court of law, or if you plead guilty in the court of law, automatically then you either get a fine or maybe subjected to some sort of jail time. So for those people who actually admitted guilt and paid fines will now have their records expunged. Now, most South Africans, I can tell you right now, have broadly welcomed this bill to say that there had been numerous complaints, especially about people missing out on opportunities such as employment because of these particular criminal records. And it has been approved by the National Council of Provinces and then signed into law by President Cyril Ramaphosa. And as we continue to also have this conversation right now, the Judicial Matters Amendment Bill also gained broad political support when it was debated in Parliament. However, left-wing economic freedom fighters welcomed part of the bill, but said it could not support it in its entirety, which then means that it was just only the EFF as well as another party, as well as another small party, which actually said no, they will not be in support of the bill. But as it stands right now, this particular bill has been passed.
And can we speak on the timing of the passing of the bill, if there's any significance for the expungement of these 400,000 or more criminal records?
Well, I'd have to gauge what timing means, but in its entirety right now, as things stand, we are heading towards an election year in the country. So one would also maybe read lots into it, especially where the ruling party is concerned and where the president himself is also concerned. Maybe one would also assume that this is now the ruling party trying to sway some votes in its part, you know, looking at how disappointed South Africans are in the ruling party at this time as we have this conversation. So if we had to look into timing, I think one thing I'd point to right now would be that we are heading towards an election year. But right now, the prosecutions as well as the prosecutors in the country that came out as a result of this flouting of these regulations. This was flouting the Disaster Management Act. It's exactly what it's called during the pandemic. It actually demonstrated the depth into which the judiciary system could be used to severely limit the rights of individuals. That's what the EFF's Veronica Mento actually said when they partially supporting this particular bill. So if you had to look into timing, as you've pointed, I would really say maybe it's towards an election year, and it would really be interesting if this sort of, just brings South Africans more towards the corner of the ANC or not. at this particular time, because we will be seeing most political parties trying to scramble for votes, especially when campaigning season begins ahead of the election year for 2024. Yeah.
Well, we know that the National Council of Provinces and, of course, President Ramaphosa must give their assent to this bill before it becomes a law. So how long do you think this will take for the process to be completed?
Right. So now, of course, as you've mentioned, the National Council of Provinces needs to bring it in, and as well, it must be signed into law by Cyril Ramaphosa. But I must tell you right now, there is little doubt that it will become law. As we're having this conversation, it seems like it will be all systems go right now for that bill, because it gained broad political support when it was debated in Parliament. That clearly points to the fact that it is certainly likely to be passed into law at this time. So we're looking at maybe a month or so max, but we will be monitoring it as it is right now. But there's definitely little doubt that it will become law.
Well, Mxolisi, Masango, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and, of course, for your analysis.